Welcome everyone to today's Insight Jam session, Take the AI Road to Better Data Integration. The title is really a riff on this idea of take the high road. And we've all had that time-tested counsel to take the high road. Even, that may be a little more difficult, a little more challenging, but it's the right thing, right? And so you want to do the right thing, and so what if it's more difficult or more challenging? But if you take the AI road, and your destination is better data integration, then maybe the AI road is easier and get the same or better outputs and outcomes with less effort and a smoother time. So that's what we're going to explore today, because recent innovations from AI in the data integration environment, automated transform, more intelligent data mapping, smarter exception handling, more powerful data counts, many areas across the technologies and techniques of data integration are being revolutionized by an AI inside of data integration. And so we've brought together 3 experts today to explore that. We're going to ask some questions and they're going to respond to those. Those questions will be like, where are AI-driven data integration techniques replacing traditional data integration techniques that we might have learned 10, 20 years ago and might be using today? What are the benefits of these changes? Why are those benefits? Well, what's the ROI? So we're going to really try to understand why we'd want to do this at all, why we want to adopt these new AI-based technologies. But then we're going to switch gears. We're going to move away from just the why to the how. And we'll focus on best practices and starting points and good techniques and stuff, so you can get the advice of these experts on how to really make it work at your organization. So we're really excited to do that today. So let me introduce our 3 experts. First up, John Santaferraro, longtime friend. John, what's going on today? What are you working on? What are you doing? What's happening out there in the world of agentic AI?
Having a lot of fun hosting the Digital Analyst podcast on Insight Jam. That's been really fun. Things are moving at Ferraro Consulting, launching some new services around messaging and positioning for vendors. So it's things are going well. Agentic AI has taken off. It's moving faster than I can keep up with it. So I'm trying to focus on agentic AI in the data management space.
Great. So today's going to be a great opportunity, because we're going to narrow that even a little smaller into within data management to data integration. So if you can bring that perspective, I think everyone will really gain a lot of value from it. Emma, please introduce yourself. Tell us about what's going on at Actian and what you do there.
Yeah, sure. So Emma McGrattan, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Actian. This is my 33rd year here, and it's difficult for an Irish person to say 33. So I am based on Long Island today, but I split my time between Dublin and New York. And at Actian, we're all about shaping the future of business with AI-ready data that's trusted, flexible, easy to use. And on the AI road, we see governance as the moral compass, right? So that use of data contracts, lineage, observability is going to keep that journey safe and successful.
Great. And we're going to apply some AI to doing that.
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect. Julian, welcome. Tell us about you and tell us about Matillion and what you do there.
Yeah, so I'm Chief of AI and Data Science here at Matillion. Matillion's a SaaS ETL company. We help people move data, remove friction from their data transformations and connect it. And what we've been working on lately is a couple of things with AI, but looking at how you can turn unstructured data into structured data. But my big recent focus has been launching Maya, which is our AI co-pilot, an agentic system, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about how that helps our users handle the data integrations.
And what was that called again?
Maya, M-A-I-A. Allows you to put your instructions into our graphical UI in natural language, and will then build out the pipelines or answer explanations in terms of what a transformation is doing. So help you debug, help you build, help you understand what data you've got in the data warehouse or available to work from. Or what best one is even configure API connections. A lot of people love that rather than wading through documentation.
Yeah, well, I think the point about unstructured data is a kind of a new element that's being added to this whole data integration pie and insight and capability. So it'll be interesting to explore that. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. I'll go ahead and start, and we'll bounce around on who I talked to, asked first, etc. Just kind of keep it lively, and feel free to add to the other person's answers. Or you tell them they're full of something. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So, John, AI-driven data integration techniques. Where do you see them replacing traditional approaches with your clients and your point of view on agentic?
Yeah, it's not an easy question to answer because AI automations have been happening for at least 15 and maybe almost 20 years. And around 2018, it really surfaced. And I started covering AI-enabled data integration back then. And there were already probably 12 different things that AI was doing in 2018. So that's 7 years ago. There was data profiling. There was data, all kinds of capabilities that were already existent at that time. I would say one of the most powerful areas today comes in the area of data mapping. Being able to not have to do the data mapping manually and being able to connect things. Data lineage is another really important thing that's happening automatically. And a lot of the metadata that used to be captured manually and entered manually, that's being automated. So it's being taken all out of the source systems automatically and then stored in what I call a metadata warehouse, right? Because most data integration platforms today have a significant metadata storehouse because that becomes the brain of the AI capabilities, and that's what expands it. There's plenty more, but I want to leave some space for these guys to talk more about what they're doing at Actian and Matillion.
Great start. Well, why don't we go to you, Emma? How would you add to John's list, or etc.?
Yeah, so definitely when it comes to quality profiling, data enrichment, anomaly detection, and so on, AI is built for that type of a workload. But also, John, I think in using LLMs for generating transformation logic, right? So that's something that we're trying to simplify the task of just describing the transformation that you want to have, and then using an LLM to either generate SQL or scripting language and build out transformational pipelines from natural language. And the intent is to just make life a little easier for everybody, right? And then we're also looking at replacing static pipelines with adaptive metadata aware flows, right? So those are able to self-correct based upon data and context. So lots of fun projects happening in the lab when it comes to AI and data integration at Actian.
Emma, take that last one, the static pipeline, and making it dynamic. Can you give a kind of an example or a story or a practical situation where that would be better?
Yeah, so think about like a healthcare provider, and they're dealing with clinical notes, right? And when you're dealing with things like hospital scenarios, and everything's happening so quickly that notes aren't taken in a standard format, right? So we've got all kinds of levels of details that are being provided in all kinds of different formats. So instead of building a static pipeline and saying, okay, so the input records have to conform with this particular structure so that we can ingest it, instead we're able to build out an AI-powered pipeline builder that'll look at the content that we're being given and then figure out how does that map to what we need on the other end of the pipeline. So that way we're able to cut the ingestion timeframes by orders of magnitude.
Can I come in on that one? Because we had a very similar sort of use case, and it's a very cool use case that I like. That we talked to a startup. I don't think they really got too much further. They had a very cool idea of a patient diary. So you would have an app on your phone, and you record a voice note each day about your symptoms, how you felt. So very much the medical note piece. And what we hit on was you could do a lot with LLMs by asking them to give you yes or no answers. So we'd take the transcript of the diary and say, just tell me yes or no, Boolean flag. Did they mention taking their medication today? Did they mention feeling depressed? Did they mention loss of appetite, symptom? And now I've got binary fields that I can do traditional BI on, I can do routing on, I can do all sorts of processing and reporting. And the really cool thing we realized with that is, let's say halfway through your study, you realize there's a new question you want to ask. If I was asking the patients a structured survey, I'd have to add the question, launch a new survey, start from the beginning, and now I've got a mix of somebody would ask it somewhere. Instead, I can go back to the start of the transcript of my new question and go, hey, people are mentioning nausea. We think it might be a side effect of one of the medications. Right, go back to everybody's diary right from the start and flag all the ones where they mention nausea as a symptom. And that ability to combine a kind of free format survey where you got really what's top of mind for people, and they're just turning it into structured flags or labels, you can do an awful lot with just that technique.
What's interesting, because what you're talking about is a dynamic data ingestion, so that if the data is all over the place, you kind of need to be dynamic in your ability to ingest. You're talking about, Julian, you're talking about a dynamic analytic over the top of that would enable you to evolve your analysis, evolve in a constant way, but also just a whole dynamic process that just keeps going. And, because so many of the pipelines just get put in place, the old days, you ETL them and then do not change a darn thing because we're so darn brittle.
Bob, another area where I've been seeing that kind of AI enablement that makes it dynamic is schema registry, because you can now register schema from not only from different sources and different databases, but from different types of data. For example, schema from data in motion and schema from data at rest, to have a continuous data pipeline and to be able to abstract away some of the schema differences using these registry capabilities in an AI enabled fashion. So I think that we're really reaching a point where you can build these end-to-end data pipelines too, that are not just focused on data sitting somewhere in a database or a data lake.
Julian, you're nodding. Is he saying that? What's your?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a lot with that sort of stuff in terms of let the AI in part of the interface, and we talk about a couple of things, uses of AI in a couple of different ways in our platform. We talk about AI in the pipeline and AI in the product. AI in the pipeline is the sort of transformation I was just talking about, where you're trying to you're asking questions about each line of data coming through and trying to turn it into structure. AI in the product is the Maya assistant style natural language interface to help the user effectively interface with our system. And we only kind of launched it formally at Snowflake Summit a couple of months ago. We've had a lot of traction from users saying that they're really enjoying being able to use it to kind of update their pipelines. It's really handy to something built a year ago and you're trying to remember exactly what it does and you're trying to debug it, or you're trying to update something and not break anything downstream. And you're starting to see some of the senior data architects or engineers starting to see that this way of working could be very different. It starts to become a bit more asynchronous. You set it chugging, you let it come back to you when it needs attention to say, I need a decision, or I think I found a problem. But it's very early days, but it's very exciting for churning through a lot of detail to try and find which in these 12 steps is there a variable going astray, or that kind of thing.
It's almost like you get a work buddy. You're going to pawn off some of the dirty work too, or you're going to bounce ideas on.
You're going to get more like a manager than an individual contributor in some ways.
Yeah, that's interesting. Emma, you were nodding as well. What are some of your thoughts in this area?
Yeah, totally agree. And I view it more almost, I mean, not quite co-pilot like, but almost getting there, right? Where you've got somebody working alongside you that is a buddy or somebody that you can provide some oversight on. But ultimately where you want to get to is where that's independent and it's able to, it's some level of autonomy, right? Where it can do its own thing.
Want more Insight Jam? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for shorts, panels, podcasts, and more. In your shorts feed, enjoy a daily dose of best practices from tech experts and leading solution providers, while long-form panel discussions and keynotes, recorded live every quarter, go deep on important industry topics. And don't miss our collection of regular podcasts, keeping you informed on the latest trends. We're hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so subscribe to be notified of our next upload. Now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, so that kind of brings us to the next question. because my next question was who's benefiting. It's kind of the roles, which roles are getting impacted the most, and in what ways. So, Emma, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, the data engineer benefits in spades, right? Because now instead of having to do all of that grunt work in mapping and so on, right, they can really focus on delivering value to the business and the bigger challenges. I think that brittleness that we've always associated with data pipelines goes away because we've got the intelligence built into the platform. So definitely data engineers get to work on more interesting things. And I see, the work that we're doing in AI to enable the data engineer is really freeing them up to do things that AI just can't do right now. So, critical thinking, asking the right questions, making judgment calls. We still depend upon our data engineers for that. And from the data steward perspective, we see the AI really being helpful in writing out descriptions, doing a lot of the documentation work. So they really become a copy editor over things like the business glossary. The business teams are definitely getting faster time to value and better access to the data that they need. And then from governance, I think they're benefiting tremendously from AI enhanced metadata, the lineage that I think John mentioned, and then policy enforcement. So I think across the business, we're seeing a number of roles that are benefiting quite significantly through the introduction of AI, even though in many of our customers, they're quite early in their AI journey.
That was awesome. So let me recap a little bit here for the audience. Data engineers, simpler, more dynamic pipelines, automating more of that work, freeing them up to make critical decisions, analysis, really think about what should be done, what are the priorities, and then sicking AI on on those. The data steward, you talked about evolving them from this data gatherer and scribe to more of the copy editor who's looking at all the information and trying to find significance and consistency. The business team, time to value, enough said there. And governance, both getting your arms around the data itself and then automating the policy enforcement. That's amazing because the problem with governance is nobody wants to be governed. So if and then the data governance people are not popular because they don't. Whereas the AI can just do the darn work. Anyway, so that's an interesting thing to recap. John, you're nodding your head. Would you add to those four roles, or would you throw a different role on? Give us your.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking about the data engineer and what it means for them, because we oftentimes talk about freeing them to be more strategic, but what is that strategic for the data engineer? And it really up levels their position. They can spend time thinking about data architecture, platform strategy, looking at cloud native versus hybrid, data mesh or data lake strategies. It really kind of up levels what they're doing from a data governance perspective. They can look at embedding governance in data pipelines, automating data pipelines, building it into some of the master data systems and requiring as somebody is building an app. So I think it really gives them an opportunity to up level the strategic nature of their job. One key area, I think it frees them to learn more about the business. This is an opportunity for the data engineer to not just be working with data, but understand what's going on in marketing, what's going on in sales, supply chain, all of these other areas. And today's data engineer, a lot of times, is really heads down in the data. So I would say to data engineers out there, this is your hallelujah, right? I mean, you can raise your hands and say and up level yourself into a new, more strategic position.
That was awesome to get those tangible examples, John. Spend more time on architecture, more time on platforming decisions, hybrid cloud, etc. Technically different tools. This should be brought to bear. I love the idea of embedding more integrated data integration into data integration. So it's kind of like a lot of integrations in there, but that's complex thinking that's now an opportunity and a possibility for them to start thinking about, well, we can put in more data governance, we could put more intelligence in this pipeline and other ways to add value. And then, the Holy Grail, know more about the business and apply your engineering skills to it. Julian, would you add some things to these tools?
I mean, the first thing I'd dive in on that is no data engineering team I've ever seen has surplus capacity or complains about twiddling their thumbs with nothing to do. And this really helps them scale up with that. And I think the overall tying in with what John was saying about getting out of the weeds is it lets people scale, but it also lets them raise the level of IP involved in their day-to-day work. And it moves everybody up the scale in some way. So it would let a junior coming in fresh out of college, or a business person doesn't know much about data engineering, the AI tools enables them to do something normally they would have to ask for help from maybe early in career data engineer. Now they can move they can move in faster, and the business folks can bring their domain knowledge in. The data junior analysts can self-serve with data requests. The data engineers don't need to serve every one of those manually. And to touch on what John talking about quality controls, one of the things we're seeing asked from several of our customers is to kind of have a quality assessment process. So the one that I think your AI tools can do is churn through all your pipelines and say, well, let's check these to see if they're compliant with whatever standards we set up. Let's check these if they're touching on the same area to see if they're consistent, or am I creating an apples to oranges comparison where one dashboard is not reporting the same? Because you've got something with infinite patience that can just churn through all of your hundreds or thousands of pipelines and pick up anomalies, pick up conflicts with your standards.
That's amazing, Julian, because you work so hard to get that pipeline in place and working. And once it's going, you just go, okay, I got to get to the next one, because I have a huge backlog. And who thinks about and assesses the old ones? Nobody. Nobody did it.
It's sanity check as well. Just getting your AI to summarize back to you what your pipeline's doing. Sometimes we'll highlight that, hey, this logic you haven't actually built the logic you thought you did.
Right. So even during the development point of view, and on the long term, as the business evolves, these old pipelines, they're just don't make sense anymore. But who knows who wanted to deal with that? That's a really good point. Anything else on the who and the benefits to the who?
Well, yeah, it lets the business folks with the domain knowledge get into the data engineering experience self-serve in a way that then leaves an audit trail, so that we don't get that problem. You go to two different analysts, you ask for the same report, you get two versions, you have a row about it in the board meeting. Here, you've left an audit trail of how it was created. It's easier to see.
So where's the value? We're talking about a lot of neat things, but where, like at Actian, in your customers, what kind of value are they achieving from this? What are you seeing in terms of ROI and benefit? Emma, what do you see?
So the ROI for us, what we see in our customer base is the ROI sweet spot is where you've got massive volumes meeting variability, right? And this is where AI really comes into its own. So I think where traditional rule-based systems would completely drown, AI just thrives. So that for our customers is where we're seeing most ROI. So initiatives like, know your customer, or Customer 360, where there's a lot to be done to match entities, fill in, AI can be used to fill in gaps in context and so on. So that one is for our customers where we're seeing a lot of benefit. So we're looking at, retailers where they're seeing reducing churn by about 25% by being able to do their data prep, deliver it in real time, and provide that personalization across all of the channels that they're taking their products to market. So that to me is a really great use case for AI, where it really, because you get bogged down in the amount of rules that you've got to deal with, and because you're talking across lots of different systems, right? Being able to use AI on all that work is showing benefits in our customer base.
The holy grail of Customer 360. Where are we at today? 183.
You can do a lot more with that. With bringing in the unstructured data. It lets the Gen AI stuff lets us synthesize your unstructured notes and your call logs with your cut traditional customer metrics of usage or spend or similar and bring the two together into a single report.
Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
yeah, I think of a day in the life of a salesperson, right? What is the one thing that salespeople hate doing most? Filling in fields. And with the kind of data integration, AI enablement that we have today, there's enough understanding of a source system and that data as it moves out and gets into an analysis system to be able to also produce new tools for autofill in applications that couldn't be done before. So I think that's a really powerful piece, as well as taking the unstructured data that sits in paperwork and contracts and all of that, and giving that kind of intelligence to the sales force, and even feeding that into the autocomplete as well. I think that it sounds like an application level thing, but I think that kind of autocomplete that helps a salesperson starts in the data engineering piece. It doesn't happen without that, because you've done it. That's where all the metadata sits, and that's what informs the autocomplete. So I think that's just an example of where value is being created.
Thank you, John. That was a really tangible thing for salespeople. I thought you were going to say taking the phone call from the boss as to what's the pipeline, what's your commit update at the end of the quarter was the thing they hate the most. But I guess you're probably right. Day to day, what they hate the most is filling all that information. And why can't it just be sucked in using these data integration based pipelines, etc. Julian, kind of to the customer 360, you were starting down the point of notes and call logs. My friend Noel Johanna at Forrester has been data integration guy since since 93 at least, probably even longer than that. Noel talked to me once about customer 720. And what he was talking about at that point was, you get all the information you have about the customer, but then what about in their social media network, who do they hang with? And what do those people think? And that can really, from the point of view of really customer understanding, kind of who's influencing them, what's their group. Oh, did they just buy this watch? Okay, maybe then that's a good candidate for me to pitch a similar watch. Cheaper because they don't have this, but your client doesn't have so much money. Is that kind of realistic? Are we starting to get to the point where we're going beyond towards that 720?
Yeah, I mean, there's two different strands I can give you on that in terms of, one is about kind of searching and the vector database matching. But the one I'll go through first is just bringing in all those, that extra layer of what people are saying on social media and a layer beyond. We've already been able to do things where you do a process where you bring in several sources together. You might web search and then web scrape the various sources, or you bring in things from a social media feed. And obviously these are in very rough, semi-structured formats, for instance, But we bring that together as basically a folder, a binder of information of different things. I'm going to throw it in LLM. And we also give the LLM, here's my list of like 12 questions or 10 questions. There's a little bit of a chain of thought about, okay, who is this customer? How they make money? What's their ideal client profile? Who they sell to? Okay, what data issues they like to run into? Therefore, how can Matillion help them? And you're taking a whole mess of different sources. Some of it could be numerical, some of it could be web search, some of it could be social media feeds, and let the model sort all that out and kind of do the equivalent of sending your intern off for 3 hours to say, this is going to be a very boring afternoon, but I need to read all this and then fill in this form. So of course they let the others come in on that one, but that.
So you guys are, eating your own dog food here.
Yeah, very much so.
John, customer 720.
Customer 720, I do think that there's some effort underway too to be able to take even conversations out of Slack, things like that, right? Where these offline conversations that are happening about the data, because data for the business users is now being embedded into into things like Slack or other communication that they're having with each other. And there's a lot of insight that you can capture out of conversations about customers, conversations about data about customers, conversations about about sales, and that all informs the customer 720, because the purpose of customer 720, we say, is better customer service, but ultimately these are for-profit organizations. It's drive more revenue. Right. So you have there are things in that you'll never find in the structured data. So I think that's just enhancing customer view with more and different kinds of perspectives.
Emma, anything to add? Because
I was smiling at the complexity of sentiment analysis when you're dealing with Irish people. Because you ask an Irish person to do something and they say, "I will," yeah, it means it's never getting done. So I think sentiment analysis can be tricky when you're dealing with specific audiences.
Well, there you go. That's why it's important to spend time in the pub as it is in the library. You're in uni. Anyway, all right, let's switch gears. We've talked about our ROI. We talked about who's benefiting, what are some of the capabilities and techniques. Okay, I want to do this. Where do I start? What do I do first? What are some of the best practices? What are the pitfalls? I don't want to lose, screw this up and get fired. So let's talk about that. John, what do you see kind of as your clients? What good starting points, for example?
Yeah, I think I guess I don't see many customers that aren't doing any kind of data integration already. So and I'm sure there are greenfield opportunities, but most of the customers that I talk to, they've been doing data integration for a while.
Maybe replacing an old technique that they've been using for a long time and replacing with an AI-driven technique. A little more.
Yeah.
consistent.
So.
All right.
Yeah. So I mean, I think the starting place is definitely the business strategy. It's like you probably could predict that any consultant would say that, right? Or anybody in our industry would say it, because if you just start with the data, you're going to end up spending your time trying to produce an ROI on something that is only measurable by productivity. But if you start with a business area where that faster time to insight, for example, is going to give you an ROI that is not just productivity, but it is bottom line, then start there. It has to be driven by a business strategy. It's likely going to be around customer or patient. You guys gave the healthcare examples, something that provides better patient care, something that actually enhances the speed of marketing, moving MQLs to SQLs, moving SQLs to close, right? Cross-selling, upselling. Pick an area of the business that is going to be impacted, and then look at the AI enablement.
So then go back, say, this is the area. Okay, we want to do a better job getting customer insight in our sales process. Okay, so how do we do that today? With what techniques? What's the art of the possible? What data would we build out? How would we use AI capabilities to add that data and add more value towards the higher level goal, which is revenue? Is that an example? Go ahead. What would you say, Emma?
So I'd say start with augmentation, not replacement. So take existing workflows and layer AI into the existing workflows. I'd focus on use case driven pilots. So look at things like automated join recommendations or lineage tracking, but kind of isolate that. And then invest in metadata infrastructure, right? So you've got to give the AI context and you've got to give it trust anchors. So getting back to the co-pilot analogy, I think you go, let AI be your co-pilot, but don't have the controls until it's proven.
That's a good one. Julian, where would you say?
Whichever leg you're going down, building up confidence within the organization and trust in it is the key with this. And the one of the important things you'll find if you're doing any data enrichment or augmentation, the very people who will make the judgment about whether it's giving any good results, the SMEs, are also going to be the ones who might be a little bit worried in the back of their mind: is this taking my job or is it impinging on my space? So you've got to bring those people on board and let them see how it's enabling them rather than it being a remote team pushing into their space. But in terms of starting places, my best analogy is to think of it as what we call the infinite intern, which is any task that's time consuming, but you could explain to a smart intern to say, I want you to do this repetitive thing, go away and make this judgment call, is a good candidate to look at. The stuff that actually Clifford in the chat is talking about taking the call notes and then going through and filling that into a structured field. Your Gen AI tools are perfect for that. And all you've really got to do is get your head around how you word the prompt in terms of saying, please pick from one of this constrained list of values. It doesn't, I can sell you a tool on a platform that will make that really easy to do, but equally you could do it with 20, 30 lines of Python and an open AI key to say, go through each call notes, fill in these fields, fill in these answers. And that's a great starting point because it's then really easy to validate. You can sit down with a sample of those the same way any data scientist would look with a testing set and say, all right, let's review my sample. How often did the AI get it right? How often does the person get it right? That kind of establish your testing and success criteria ahead of time. And it is again a confidence building measure.
So let me summarize a few of those ideas. John said, start with the business strategy. Why do anything? Why do it now? Well, follow the money, follow the outcomes that you're really trying to drive. I like the idea, Emma, of augmentation, not replacement. Just use the AI. Replacement, you're going to get resistance, because the old way and this and that and the other. But the augmentation, it's an easier way to get over the barrier and kind of get up the learning curve. Use case driven. It's kind of a compliment to John's point. Get focused on something. I'll circle that. Then invest in the metadata, which is the infrastructure that's going to. So the better the foundation, the better the results. Build confidence and trust, Julian. The people part. Oh, those darn people. People, process, and technology. We've spent our whole time, talking about some of the technology and some of the process and some of the people in terms of the roles, but in that triad, I guess people tends to always rise to the top, doesn't it? Yeah. So build confidence and trust, include the SMEs from the start. And then I love the idea of the infinite intern. So within this kind of top down, these important areas, what is it we're having to do that's kind of low to medium level work that we might be able to just automate away pretty quickly?
Yeah. I'll give you a good example of one of our customers getting huge ROI on this. The financial services company in the UK, you've got to take customer feedback forms every year by legal requirement. You're capturing anything from a paragraph to a page or two of free format text. Processing this used to take, I think it was something like 1,000 person hours a year to process. And just putting it through a process that said, okay, what are the themes coming out of this? Deduping that list of themes, topics, and then tagging each survey, each feedback to say, okay, which of those topics came up and what's the sentiment score on that topic? So you're getting varying sentiment scores on each topic and you're getting very actionable data that you can report on to be able to say, okay, here's how many people mentioned this and here's how that aligns to their demographic or their spend or their investment levels. And you can pull out separate views. So actually, this person will give you a 7 out of 10 on overall sentiment, but what I can really see is they give you a 9 out of 10 for quality of investment advice and 2 out of 10 for the fees, which is a customer that likes what you're giving them, but would like to pay less. Very different. But that had really provable ROI because otherwise it was paying people relatively, in fact, very low level data processing folks, but it's slow. It takes months from the survey being completed to have it available. And now they run it 4 times a year instead of 1 time a year. And it costs them $300 rather than, 25,000 a year to run. So you're getting enormous ROI just because you found a task that's relatively simple and repetitive and slow and automated that. And I'm sure there's tons of other examples out there that my friends on the call here.
Well, the thing I love about that example on the macro level, you get kind of a time trend of the sentiment and where as an organization, you need to lead in to kind of provide better customer support or more this or less that to just move the mountain. But what your example with the one customer who, likes the services, but doesn't like the fees. I mean, that's perfect information for their account manager. I mean, that is a very, I mean, talk about customer 360, that or 720, that's definitely getting some insight that they can use tangibly. So that was a great example. Just kind of, data that they had and just finding value from it. Anything you guys would add in terms of transitions? Because the other way to look at the question is, what do you avoid?
I think that if you look at, you have to look at the solution by understanding the system, right? System thinking. Don't just try and optimize a data pipeline. That you want to look at the system and figure out what are the bottlenecks, where are the feedback loops not working, where are there delays, and so you can actually look at that entire system. And if you understand your system, then you target things that are repeatable and will impact multiple touch points. Because companies that are running data pipelines now, the number of data pipelines, you guys probably know this better than I do. But for some customers, it has to be already in hundreds and maybe thousands of pipelines throughout a complex organization. So you can start small, but think about the system.
Okay, Julian, what would you add here?
Yeah, so you're talking about things to avoid, or the
Things to avoid. Yeah.
you want one, I think, is being overly ambitious and drowning in the need to produce an enormous tangible You overscope a really big project. It's going to be 6 months of work or 9 months of work, and then to justify that, you need an enormous ROI, and that can really damn AI in the eyes of the organization, because if you try it, maybe you learn some lessons along the way, but you don't get those kind of results, and you end up crashing and burning, and then everybody puts it on the back burner for a year until somebody new comes in. So starting small POCs, low risk areas, because you've got to kind of learn how to operate in this new world, and people got to learn new skills. So start small. That doesn't need to boil the ocean in terms of results. You'll learn something then, and then you'll start to see, once you use it, you'll start to see adjacent use cases. But we had a case, again, internal use cases. Our QE team started using some of these processes to generate test cases for what's coming up in a release. Okay, here's a battery of test cases, what needs to be run for these features. And then they started to see adjacent things like, can I generate release notes based on this? Can I then map the what happened in the last change to the support cases coming in? And all of those come from just somebody seeing it and doing a few hours of work, rather than, because once they've built skills, rather than it being a massive implementation with half a dozen consultants working for a quarter or more. So start small, pick low ambitions while you learn, and then you'll start to see what's possible.
Well, and I like your tangible advice of maybe some internal use cases that are kind of, where you can manage the risk. And also, then once you get one example, look for the adjacent. That's just so pragmatic. Why now we see this. Now we see this. Oh, now that we have these 3 new areas, we can do this. And you're just kind of a bunch of small wins, yeah, but adjacent wins, and you're starting to get momentum that you wouldn't get if you keep starting new domains every single time, because there's such a startup cost. What about you, Emma? What do you think in terms of areas to avoid, pitfalls, and that sort of thing?
So I would say avoid treating AI like a magic box, right? You've got to have transparency, you've got to have explainability, and you have to have a human in the loop. So we have a customer in Ireland, and they are the Irish equivalent of the IRS. And they wanted to answer their end customers, so the tax-paying public, questions about tax law or changes to rules. But they didn't want to set an agent on all of the tax law over time, because their fear was that the taxpayer would kind of manipulate the questions, and all of a sudden they're getting a message from taxation saying that we owe you money, or here's the best ways to avoid paying taxes. So they put a human in the loop, right? So there's a human between the customer and their Red Assist agent, but that agent's able to go and crawl all of the tax documentation, tax legislation, and their systems, get the answers, and then provide that answer back to the tax-paying customer. So I think when it comes to situations like that, having a human in the loop, encouraging that human to be data curious, right? So giving them the opportunity to ask questions of the data and to have a good feel as to when the answers are right or not. And then I think data literacy and building on a data culture are going to be fundamentally important if we're going to really be successful with AI. So pitfall to avoid: don't treat it like a magic box or a magic wand. It's not going to solve all of your problems, but it certainly can help. Right. So getting back to that message around augmentation and not replacement.
Great. Thank you. Turn people into data curious people into data gurus and help enable that data literacy and data culture that we're all seeking.
Unlock better leads through Solutions Review events.
Welcome to Data Demo Day. Expert Roundtable, Solution Spotlight featuring Monte Carlo, Cohesity, Denodo, Cloudflare, High Gear, Broadcom, Next Thing.
Boost your brand with a webinar that shares comprehensive use cases, real-time product demos, and an interactive Q&A. All broadcast live to LinkedIn, YouTube, and Zoom from our Boston studio, or even on location. Fill your sales funnel with high-quality targeted leads. And contact us today by visiting solutionsreview.com/virtual events.
So let me ask a question, a specific question. All the people out there listening, they have a bunch of data integration tools already, vendors, capabilities. My experience is people underuse the existing capabilities that they already own. And now you guys have been working like maniacs to add value with new AI inside techniques to make the existing capabilities you were providing even more powerful, and add adjacent capabilities as well to kind of more, broaden your platform more and more capabilities. What do you see in terms of just getting people to, adopt what they already have or to adopt the latest capabilities? Is there anything you're finding that works better there that then people can apply? Not you, Emma, just pushing as a vendor, but they can pull in from their side as a consumer. Do you have any ideas on that? I know that wasn't a question I had pre-discussed, but it's just curious at this point.
So asking me specifically, so at Actium, we believe in, as we roll out new iterations of our products and platforms, and delivering product tours, right? And the product tour highlights the new capabilities that have been added, and we're adding a lot of capabilities around AI, but also explain the business benefit of the capability, right? So looking at it from both a technical perspective and the business perspective, and trying to get buy-in that way. But as I said earlier, starting small, and growing trust in the AI and the AI capabilities and the tooling that we're delivering is definitely going to be important to have broader success.
So you're trying to enable their uptake the best you can.
Yeah, exactly.
How are you, Julian, from your side? The CTO talk that come visit the customer and tell them the art of the possible and get them excited is great.
Well, we found with what we were doing, because the capabilities are so new in some cases, that people really don't comprehend the level at which they can deal with, and you get a lot of cynicism about what's possible. So we felt we had to be really bold in getting people's hands on it at the earlier stage, even within the demo. We actually set up processes that we use our own Maya tools to AI and the pipeline tools to generate dummy data that's kind of bespoke to the customer's industry. So when we give them a demo, it's not our person giving them a demo. It's, here you are, go and chat with your data here in the experienced interface for yourself and just see what's possible. And we see an awful lot of folks that come in very skeptical and then tend to be very wowed. Ironically, the stuff that most wins people over is when they see Maya making a mistake, they see something invalid, and you see a little look going, aha, I got you, you're not as smart as all that. And then when they see Maya correct itself, because it's getting a feedback loop within our platform of validations, like, is this pipeline configured correctly? And then suddenly that red thing, you see, oh, this component's invalid, or when I sample, I'm seeing no rows here. I need to go back 3 steps in the pipeline and correct that previous join. That's when suddenly the penny drops and they really get bought in. But nothing beats, with these kind of tools, getting people's hands on it. And it's a little bit the same with what we're talking about with data transformation. If they're doing it for themselves rather than it being done to them, you start to get people to buy in, because it stops being, you're selling me a really cool thing, and it becomes, you're enabling me to do a really cool thing. You're enabling me to be super productive, or you're enabling me to be super clever. And let them feel like they baked the cake. It's the analogy I think best used. I don't know if you heard the story of the Betty Crocker cake mix, but originally it was a mix. You just added water and they put it in the oven, and didn't really work, didn't really sell. They changed their recipe that you had to break an egg into it and stir it in and then add water. And that was it, just enough mixing that the customer could say, I baked the cake. And our feeling with AI is the end users, you want them to think, or they want them to be able to say to their boss and their stakeholders, I baked this cake. I did this cool thing with AI. And your name needs to vanish out of the way until such time as they actually just need to cut you a check.
Thank you. I love that analogy. We're going to crack a few eggs on the way. John, you spent a lot of years on the vendor side trying to get the users to adopt the new technologies. Now you're on the advisory side, working with the customers directly to get them to, pull it in from that side. Any ideas there to get the people to really adopt these capabilities that are there, that are available, they've already paid for? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, when you're talking about adoption, the technology leader is no longer just a technology leader. They become a change agent. And so in communicating with potential users, where you've got these features that are valuable, their value, or you wouldn't have bought them, or you wouldn't have identified them for your adoption campaign. Don't lead with the features, lead with how that solves a specific pain. And identify what are the top frustrations with the current tools that your user base is using. What is frustrating them? How is this new technology going to address really specific pain points? And once you do that, then you begin to demonstrate some quick wins, and there always emerges a small group of enthusiastic, influential followers. They're not just power users. These are people that tried it out. They found out that it works, and they are excited about it, and they want other people to know about it and use their success to build more momentum, peer influence. And then when you find things, begin to insert those new capabilities into workflows, right? It may not be an automated workflow, but this is the steps we take to do data integration, from understanding the source, understanding data ownership, understanding the target. And here are 3 things in the middle that we do that we know if you use these features in the product, you'll be able to experience what these other users have done. So I think it becomes a role shift for technology leaders from just being leaders of technology to becoming change agents.
That's great, because I think, as much as Julian can fine tune the education process with dummy data and more relevancy, and as Emma talked about, providing more, guidance and techniques and stuff about how to use it as much as what it does. And much of that is, I think, this idea of from the consumer side, the user side, the buyer and consumer of the technology, to view themselves as change agents and really identify who are these, early adopter / evangelists that I need to get on board, to kind of go make things happen. I think that's very practical. These champions of Clifford comes in with find the champions and make them heroes. And make it easy for them to become heroes, because now we're working from, this fear of the new adoption and the technology to the, the benefit and the greed of, hey, I want an attaboy, I want a gold star, I want to be recognized. And I'm, by the way, I'm having a lot of fun trying out this new stuff. until
You
every
want you want it to be. We didn't put the fire out; they did. We just handed them the fire extinguisher. That's the
yeah, especially important if you burn the cake.
yes.
Well, listen, we've got to wrap up. We've just been going on, and then we could go on forever. But really, some great insights on this AI inside data integration, how to bring these capabilities to bear, what these new capabilities are, how to bring them to bear. Thinking about not just the processes and the processes way, these new pipeline and the dynamics that are available today, and the way to think about them, both dynamic data and dynamic pipelines, but also to think about some of the technology capabilities that have now been enabled by AI, particularly in the domains of unstructured data that just wasn't available to us in the past. So technology, but then we also spent a lot of time on the people. We talked about the evangelists. We talked about the SMEs. We talked about bringing a business perspective. We talked about enabling the data engineers to become more strategic. And John provided some real samples of what that strategic means. So we've covered a lot of ground today. I want to thank our guests. Just a great job. I really appreciate you investing your time in our audience. We'll be back again in the next Inside Jam. Will be my buddy Wayne Eckerson. It'll be how to blend software and data engineers on a single team. So that's definitely going to be a drill down on the people part. As always with Wayne, we'll have some illustrative examples so to bring those stories to life. And then the beat goes on next month. We could continue. Sheriff Fox leads off Insight Jam at the first Friday of the month. I do this second Friday of the month, and then Wayne does the fourth Friday of the month. I think we're going to try to find somebody to do the third Friday of the month as well. So you guys we definitely keep the beat going. So we'll see everybody then and there. And thank you again for this great session. I really appreciate, and I think the audience will too. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.